If you believe in this number,
we anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America. Systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. But what many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. And it's not white Americans' fault, but just a fact.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
we are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. If you believe in this number as I do and would like to join me in the fight for reparations, please email me at friendsofadostv@gmail.com. That's friendsofadostv@gmail.com.
Good evening on the West Coast, in the Central, in the Mountain,
on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the reparations perspective, bringing you those Adocs hot topics and making the case for what our reparations, weaponizing the vote, and socializing the suffering. And this series brings me great joy. I'm talking to my immigrants. This show is for y'all. This show is my love letter to y'all. I know I don't always sound like a love letter. I'm just very passionate about Adocs. Y'all see the blatant neglect of my people? You know what's happening. You see it in real time. You see it. We're at George Floyd 929, and we need you. We need all hands on deck. I want to welcome Slave Bible, Melanated Integrity, Teresa Moses. All of you who have yet to chat in the live, my clubhouse, come on over here and join me live at YouTube, and I'll jump over there for the after party. But God spoke to me because I was so sick of the xenophobic narrative. I've got immigrant friends whom I love dearly, and I knew that I had to do something to turn that narrative all the way around, because that's just white folks trying to start wars amongst us that don't need to be had. We don't blame y'all for the come up. We just feel like you guys owe us, since we were the reparations for you. Yeah, the slavery, the Jim Crow. You guys, Immigration Act was passed after 65. And so I am here to talk about how we got to become the anchor of America with 3 Ks. It has had its oppressive boot on our necks, figuratively, in the way Chauvin literally had it on George Floyd. You don't just get to George Floyd 929 within a year, right? That was last year. You get to George Floyd from the time we were dragged here in chains. You see, George Floyd isn't new for American descendants of chattel slavery. That's what we were birthed in. That hell, that horror coming over here on those slave ships. So this show is designed to reach out to you, to wave the white flag, to let you know you are loved and you are needed. Because, as the Asians are currently experiencing, you will never break the back of white supremacy until you stop anti-Black racism. We're the poster child for it, as we have a government weaponizing what happened to George Floyd in order to give Asians protections. Not an anti-lynch law, not deeming the KKK, skinheads, and neo-Nazis the domestic terrorist groups that they are. These are the ones I just read on my prior show about the FBI did a report in 2016 from their investigations that the skinheads, the neo-Nazis, and the KKK have infiltrated the police all through the country. Okay? So we didn't just get to George Floyd because Trump was in office. And I'm going to delve into that history one bite at a time. We're going to eat that elephant one bite at a time, because we are still in our Holocaust. And you can't scream and jump up and down and say Black Lives Matter if you don't believe in our reparations in cash. So I want to jump right into today's topic and just give you a little bit before I share the lovely Ally Cheyenne Lin's video on Gone with the Wind, and, comment in between. That's how I do. So I want you to understand, I'm still dealing with this segment of how Biden has neglected American descendants of chattel slavery, who 87% of our electorate, along with Black immigrants, are included in that, actually helped him and Kamala to win the White House. He's around 70 days in office, has yet to do anything for American descendants of chattel slavery, after saying, "You had my back, I'll have yours." He instead has been caught on video talking about George Floyd and then pivoting to Asian protections since the COVID, while 68% of their assaults have been verbal. They don't have the number of killings under their belt that they have both A, participated in against Adocs, and B, the race soldiers in our communities, the KKK, neo-Nazis, and skinheads who have infiltrated the police department. They don't come for Asians. Let's talk about why. Asian Americans are 18,415,198 in this country, and their median income is $87,243. White folks, they're 245,860,228, and their median household income is $65,777. And blacks, combined with other races, we're 46,261,485. Our median income is 41,911. So when you talk about race soldiers and you talk about skinheads and KKK and the neo-Nazis, I have a brilliant audience. Can my co-host type which neighborhood are the race soldiers bound to be policing in? The Asians, where they're worth 87,000 median income, the whites who are worth 65,000 median income, or the blacks who are worth 41,000 median income. And to break that further down, of 103 trillion household dollars last count. We need a whole new count since COVID. Much has changed. White folks share over 100 trillion household dollars compared to black folks sharing 3 trillion. Of that 3 trillion, 10% share 2.3 trillion, and 90% of blacks share less than 700 billion since COVID. Now let's do the math. If of all the blacks in this country, 90% descend from American chattel slavery and 10% are black immigrant, who actually benefits by and large? I know there's crossover in each sector, but who by and large benefits from the 2.3 trillion? Adocs or black immigrants? And who by and large benefits from the less than 700 billion since COVID? Adocs or black immigrants? Black immigrants and a few unicorns from the Adocs community benefit from 2.3 trillion. And it's still no money as compared to over 100 trillion that was stolen from us. Okay? And black immigrants share that 2.3 trillion with a few unicorns, while the rest of us whose ancestors built the country with their lives share in the less than 700 billion since COVID. So when you're sharing 2.3 trillion, are you undergoing closed schools in your district? Are you undergoing black teachers being fired in your communities? Are you undergoing redlining into racist environmentally racist neighborhoods and tenement housing? Lead water, hookworm, lead paint on the walls, lack of affordable health care, no money for college degrees, lack of affordable housing. Can you on a median income of 41,000, 42,000 if you round up. Can 90% who share less than 700 billion since COVID afford even the median home price nationwide of a house, 340,000? Can you afford to be in business for yourself? Do you have any collateral to go into business for yourself? Can you do that when your median income is 42,000? So I'm here to tell you, my fellow Black immigrant brothers and sisters, your blues will never be like that of ours, because you don't live in the communities where the KKK, the skinheads, and the neo-Nazis are a part of the police force until you get to a George Floyd, who allegedly was in Cup Foods, with a fake $20 bill, a counterfeit $20 bill that he clearly knew not of. He was sitting in his car outside the Cup Foods. So I wanted to share that so you will understand how Adocs can't afford to be racist. We can't afford to be xenophobic. Not just Black immigrants, excuse me, by and large Asian and Arab and Indian immigrants own our communities. They own the liquor stores, the hair shops, the nail shops. The only way to be racist is to have power. And the only way to have power is to have money. And there are two lanes to accessing whiteness in this country. When the government makes you white by your complexion to bolster up their numbers, okay? Or when you can afford to buy access to whiteness, because green is the new white in this country. Case in point, you see what they're doing to allow immigrants they can make white into the country who are poor, and the Black poor Haitians they are turning back. Africans know themselves. The only way they get in this country is if they can pay. You've got to have that green to have access to whiteness. Your poorer African is not coming over in this country. Maybe one every blue moon. I hear they stand on long lines just to get a visa to come over here. And they're only giving them out very sparingly because they don't want you to stay in the country. They'll give access to illegals that they can make white to neutralize Adocs economically, to neutralize our vote, and to make us fourth-class citizens in the country our ancestors built with their lives. So they can deny us the justice claim they owe us in the trillions over multi-generations. And I need y'all to see that. I need you to see it and get in the fight. Make the calls, do the campaigns. Fix HR 40 is a huge one. I need all hands on deck. If someone over there, one of my mods, well, not mods, I'm just calling you a mod. If someone would be so kind as to type www.fixhr40.com, this is a point where the immigrants can get into the fight with us. I'm inviting you to help us fix HR 40. Right now, we have Sheila Jackson Lee, who descends from Jamaica, talking about a cashless repair. She's talking about a cashless reparations. Well, we've got a Fix HR 40 campaign, and we need all hands on deck. For those of you allies who want something to do, visit that site. Get your scripts for your phone calls, your tweets, your Instagrams, your Facebook, your emails. They done laid it all out for you. Who to target, and the scripts are right there. Copy and paste, or just read straight from them when you make the call. Because we're done being the anchor of this country. It's been over 400 years. We are literally and figuratively at George Floyd 9/29. And let me help you understand something. This doesn't stop until anti-Black racism is highlighted, talked about, magnified, and dealt with. Okay? So let me talk about the Asians again. Over 183 organizations joined AAPI group's call for $300 million to address anti-Asian violence. Biden has done nothing to close the over $100 trillion egregious racial wealth gap that the government killed and allowed civilians to kill us, burn down our Black Wall Streets, and literally stole from our Freedmen's Bureau Bank. He's done nothing about that. Weaponized George Floyd to give Asians protections, and now Asians are wanting $300 million. More than 183 national organizations led by Asian American Pacific Islander AAPI community groups have called on the White House to set aside $300 million for safety and relief programs. Where is the safety and relief programs for American descendants of chattel slavery? This is genocide. To neglect those of us who are really experiencing anti-Black racism beyond a verbal assault. Hello, Asians, 68% of your assaults are verbal. You've been shoved around. My apologies that you were executed by the race soldier, the civilian race soldier down in Georgia. But I'm talking about over 400 years of a Holocaust that this government has yet to do anything to provide us safety and relief programs. We had it with affirmative action until it was co-opted and given to white women, immigrants, and LGBTQIA. Okay? Thank you to those of you who have donated to the show. Let me fly my banner. In case you guys feel so compelled, you enable me to educate the masses when you give and do advocacy. We're having some victories, but we need all hands on deck. So if you feel so compelled, bless the show so that I can further my work and further my voice and further my advocacy. Your contributions to the show help me to do the show. It helps me offset the cost of the show. It helps me advocate. Right now, we've got AB 3121 to study reparations for Adocs here in California. We've also got Catholic Church, giving a down payment of $100 million, and Evanston, Illinois has set aside $10 million. So this is the work of the reparationist movement. So we would greatly appreciate any and all of your support. And thank you to those of you who have already given very generously to my work. I greatly appreciate you more than I have words to convey. Let me get back to my article. Just a second. Lord have mercy. Okay. All right. So let's back to the text. I've only got about another 20 minutes or so of this topic. I want to show the video before we go. Why it matters. The letter of demands was delivered to President Biden and Vice President Harris during their meeting with AAPI leaders in Atlanta on Friday, days after a white gunman in Atlanta killed 8 people, including 6 Asian women. Of note, earlier Friday, Biden in a statement called for the passage of the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. The measure would expedite the federal government's response to the rise of hate crimes exacerbated during the pandemic, support state and local governments to improve hate crimes reporting, ensure that hate crimes information is more accessible to Asian American communities. Details of the AAPI request $100 million to go to AAPI groups to develop programs that address discrimination against Asian people, with an additional $200 million requested in the next federal budget for longer-term community safety, recovery, and resilience, including funds to help hate crime victims report incidents in their language, receive mental health support, and navigate government resources. That sure would be nice for Adocs who are traumatized. We are at George Floyd 929. Money to help organizations advocate for victims and survivors. That would be nice for Adocs. Resources for creating alternatives to law enforcement, such as violence prevention and crises intervention. Helpful for Adocs. Funds to help AAPI essential workers and low-wage workers confronting the twin pandemics of COVID-19 and systemic racism, especially immigrants. We had a COVID relief letter that went ignored and neglected by the Biden administration and the CBC. Establishing a White House level interagency task force to coordinate federal efforts with AAPI advocates. Disaggregating resources to ensure they are appropriately directed to Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities and organizations. Yeah, like we have an ethnicity bill where we want to be deemed Black American descendants of chattel slavery to unflatten Blackness in order to unmask the fact that the people who built the country share less than 700 billion since COVID, while the people who came predominantly after the 65 Immigration Act share in 2.3 trillion. What they're saying, it's open season on Asian American women and girls, transgender and gender nonconforming, undocumented and immigrant communities. The letter to Biden begins. Since when has it not been open season for American descendants of chattel slavery? Our Asian elders are not safe walking on the streets for fear of getting sliced, punched, shoved, kicked, and spit on. We can't jog while Black. We can't be in our homes sleeping while Black. We can't be in our homes watching TV being Black. We can't fall asleep in a Wendy's drive-thru while Black. We can't make a tea run and make it home alive while Black. We can't be in the Asian grocery store buying a carton of orange juice without being executed by the Asian. We can't tell the race soldier, I've got a weapon in the glove compartment without being executed by an Asian race soldier who murdered Philando Castile. We can't be in the stairwell of our project housing without Peter Liang executing Gerling in the stairwell of his public housing in New York. We can't be in Asian hair shops without some of them assaulting us, trying to choke us out. But Biden goes and sits with those people. And Harris, they jumped the plane to get down there for the 6 Asian women that have been executed. So please don't march for Black Lives Matter if you aren't willing to get in this fight and help us matter economically, help us matter social and economic justice. Because you really don't give a damn beyond the police to stop murdering us. If you're not fighting for our social and economic inclusion, you don't give a damn about Adocs life, which is how you are able to leave your countries. You leave there and come here for the education and the advancements. While some of you, not all, look down your nose at Adocs and want to call us shiftless and lazy, no good, no count, I don't know why they don't try harder to pull themselves up by their bootless straps. Well, we were 4 million upon our emancipation. We've grown to 40 million if you don't count the Black immigrants. We didn't do that sitting around waiting for reparations that are owed. We pulled ourselves up by our bootless straps, and as this series grows, we're going to get into every step of how we got here. Back to the text. Our children endure bullying and are all but invisible in what they learn about in school. Is that not true of Adocs? Aren't we the most miseducated? If we've got education in our communities at all, aren't the public school dollars leaving our communities to enrich white public school neighborhoods, which many of the Asians and folks that identify as white, Hispanic, Indian, the ones that can be made white by complexion or green? Aren't our public school dollars being used to fund white public schools, charter schools? Because we're set up for the preschool to prison pipeline. Unlike the immigrants who had the money. That money is a return on the investment in our Black bodies as chattel slavery. Our businesses are shuttered, our homes graffiti. We can't wait any longer. How long has Adocs been waiting? We can't even get business loans in our own community. We can't even buy homes to be graffitied. Who can't wait any longer again after over 400 years? The community groups also single out President Trump for his China virus rhetoric. He extended the wounds of the AAPI community and invited hate-filled white supremacists to pour salt on them, the letter states. Well, at least they're calling out white supremacy right there. After the meeting, the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum released statements highlighting the racialized misogyny that targets Asian women. The prior presidential memo did nothing to prevent the murders that occurred this week, nor has it stemmed the flow of violence and hate to date. Executive Director Sung Yeon Choi Morrow said, referring to Biden's January directive for federal agencies to examine anti-Asian discrimination. Hi, Tamara, my love. I'm live over here in YouTube. If you want to join, and then we'll come over for the after party. Otherwise, you can chill right there and join me on the stage in about 27 minutes, my love. Thank you for joining the live. Okay, so Executive Director Sung Yeon Choi Morrow said, referring to Biden's January directive for federal agencies to examine anti-Asian discrimination. I just shared on my prior show about how the FBI has known since 2006 that the KKK, the neo-Nazis, and the skinheads have infiltrated the police force all throughout the country. And it's stated that these police officers that were hired are able to be associated with hate groups and still get hired on the force. So we don't even have an anti-lynch bill turned into law. We got the bill, we don't have the law. And Biden and Harris jump a flight to go down and listen to the AAPI. And are more than likely going to deliver on their demands. Because their median net worth, their median income is $87,000 to Adocs $42,000. And it's our ancestors who built all the wealth that enables them to have a median income of $87,000. Their businesses being in our communities, we assisted them to $387 billion in sales last year. What is clear is that we need an interagency, full government response that addresses the full spectrum of our community's needs, that requires actual long-term investment. The big picture, the pandemic has led to a rise in anti-Asian incidents across the U.S. Asian women are particularly vulnerable. They are 2.3 times more likely to report an incident than Asian men, according to Stop AAPI Hate. Okay, so let me jump and see how y'all are doing over here before I show the video and pray us out. Thank you guys for joining the live. Those I can see and those I cannot. I'm especially grateful to my immigrants, whom I'm hoping and praying we can convert into allies, who do as amazing, if not more amazing job than Cheyenne Lin does, getting her people together. It's on each of us to sound the alarm. The anti-Black racism has to stop and get in this fight for our social and economic inclusion. Nobody asked me when it came to the Japanese getting repaired, the Jews being repaired by Obama, with money. We weren't even a part of the Holocaust, but Obama felt the need to give them $12 million more dollars. They've been paid about $833 billion by Germany or more by now. It's hard to find that data, but this country has been complicit in giving them, last count in 2013, I want to say we've given them, I want to say 333 million. Don't quote me. I will look that up so I can tell it to you straight away. But yeah. Nobody asked us how we feel about the way our tax dollars are being used to do right by everyone but us. But when it comes to reparations for American descendants of chattel slavery, we need allies to put pressure on their groups to support it, then to put pressure on their political officials. That's how that has to work. And that's what this show is designed to do, prayerfully recruit you to those efforts. Thank you guys for the beautiful compliments. I do my best to come correct over here for you guys. Michael Cooper, welcome to the live. East Indians own the hotels and motels in historically Black neighborhoods. He's absolutely right. Down here in LA, Asian Indians are worth $465,000 liquid to American descendant chattel slave, $200 liquid to African immigrants, $60,000 liquid. Now, this is from the Color of Wealth report from 2004 to 2014. Okay. I don't have the data since COVID, which we've been dying disproportionately from, while the government neglects to do any of the COVID relief measures we were pushing for as a reparationist movement. That went neglected and ignored. Dorothy Nichols, welcome to the live, my love. You can put links on YouTube. You can't put links on YouTube anymore? I can't? Okay, well, let me do it here. www. I'm going to put the link to get you guys help in helping us to fix HR 40, which is right now cashless reparations package. We need your help. Thank you so much for trying, DJ Sejuan. I appreciate it. So I shared it in the chat. It's coming. Satch, Ohio. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. That's a quote by Malcolm X. Satch, Ohio. Absolutely. They are trying to make us out to be xenophobic, to get the immigrants to hate us when we are their reparations. If it weren't for what we endured, the 65 Immigration Act would never have occurred. So I will be digging more into that as the series unfolds. Okay. Very good. Okay, so with the time remaining, I'm at 7:39. Let me share the lovely Cheyenne Lin, who I'm very prayerful will be a guest on my show. I shared in my past archives of this series, which I think there's only 2 under my belt. This makes the 3rd. She dealt with anti-Black racism in the U.S. and anti-Black racism amongst her own people. Stay home, stay home. You got this. I don't know what that means, Media Engagement Solutions. But anyway, make that make sense. Okay, so let me share her video and I'll be commenting in between, but it's just rich. I love how each of us she puts the responsibility on her own people to research about anti-Black racism until it's a thing amongst her people to get in the fight for our social and economic justice. And I'm really prayerful to have her on the show in the not so distant future, okay? Stand by. I got to queue up everything and get it going. And then we can pray out and jump on Clubhouse. If you feel so compelled, you might be a little tired. If I see anyone over there after the show, I'll give it a few minutes before I retire the Clubhouse. It's open right now under Dear Immigrants because of Adocs. So if I've got my immigrants over here and you want to chat more with me, you can meet me over there after I pray us out, okay? So stand by. Gotta find it now. Gone with the Wind. This is just Rich.
In 1942, 1947, 1954, 1967, 1971, 1974, 1989, 1998, and 2014. This movie has been repackaged again and again for white audiences. White girls with their mammy dolls have turned into white women with their Gone with the Wind tote bags. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today's video is the last video for now in my series about anti-blackness in the United States. The first video was a basic 101 conversation about the overt and covert ways white supremacy operates in the United States, and the second video was about anti-blackness in the Asian American community. So if you haven't seen those, I highly suggest you check them out before watching this one. So today, we're going to talk about Gone with the Wind and why it should be archived away. So part one, what is Gone with the Wind? So for those of you who don't know, Gone with the Wind is a movie from 1939 that I still think holds the record for highest grossing movie ever when adjusted for inflation. It's based on a book of the same name by Margaret Mitchell, which came out in 1936. And the book was so popular that the movie adaptation only came out 3 years later. So the movie takes place before, during, and after the Civil War, and it centers around the O'Hara family who live in the Confederate South and want to fight, and do fight, against the Yankees or the North in order to keep their slaves. And at the helm of the family is, of course, Scarlett O'Hara, one of Hollywood's most remembered anti-heroes. And she does anything and everything necessary in order to survive after the South loses the war, and she in turn loses her wealth and status. The film is 3 hours long and details decades of Scarlett's life, from when she's a young woman looking to be wed, to after the war when she's a widow, and to her eventual marriage with longtime sweetheart Red Butler, who in the end leaves her due to her shrewdness, but not before raping her. And throughout all of this, the peculiar institution of slavery hangs in the background like window dressing. The black actors in the film, Hattie McDaniel, Butterfly McQueen, Everett Brown, and Oscar Polk, play the roles of Scarlett's slaves. And of course, they're quite happy being enslaved. Mammy, portrayed by Hattie McDaniel, is the black best friend character, who is loving and supportive to Scarlett, but we never learn anything about her. Butterfly McQueen, who plays Prissy, was written to say this line,
I don't know nothing about birth and babies.
When we all know black women definitely knew about the realities of childbirth due to the sexual violence they faced, which, by the way, was already well known, as black memoirs have existed since slavery, but Hollywood didn't and still doesn't give a shit about that. Next, there's pork.
Let me interject right there. They stopped importing Africans to do slavery when it was no longer profitable. So the bulk of slaves were created on breeding farms. We're going to get into that as the series unfolds, about the heinous rapes and being mated with men that were not our husbands, and the atrocities of the breeding farms, which is how we got to 4 million. When they stopped importing Africans, we were at around 730,000. The rest of those numbers were made up by the breeding farms. I'll be over there momentarily to the Clubhouse. If you want to catch the rest of the show live for the next few minutes, you can jump on the YouTube. Thank you for joining the Clubhouse. I'll be there momentarily. And you can come up to the stage and speak your mind. But yeah, You have to understand that what we endured was worse than animals. What we endured was worse than George Floyd, 9 minutes, 29 seconds. That was regular life for us as slaves, our ancestors as slaves. And we're going to get into that as we explore different material and talk about these things, what slave life was like. You guys have got to get a visual of what we endured so you can understand what happened to make a space for immigrants to come here in this country and do as well as they have. It has nothing to do with these white racist tropes that we're lazy and no good and no count and aren't willing to pull ourselves up by our bootless straps. They gave with one hand and gave away and took away with the other. It was horrific, and we're going to unpack it here in this series, Dear Immigrants, because of Adocs. Moving on.
Portrayed by Oscar Polk. And he stays with Scarlett even after the war. And in reality, a lot of enslaved people did stay because they just didn't have much or anything, and they most certainly were not given reparations. But the movie framed...
Let me stop again. We've never been given reparations. I think there's been some small incidences where people have managed to fight and win for reparations, but by the time they finished fighting for the repair, it was already spent. And we'll get into some of that. But by and large, after we fought in the Civil War to help the Union succeed, okay, we were given 40 acres and a mule by Abe Lincoln. He was executed, and Johnson took away the 40 acres and a mule and came up with the Homestead Act to enrich white immigrants and our slave oppressors and white folks at large already in the country between the North and the South. Slavery was not just in the South. We're going to get into stuff like Seneca Village, which is now Central Park. We're going to talk about a beach down here that was taken from blacks under eminent domain. We're going to get into all of it here. So they really undermine why the Adocs had to stay as slaves or what became sharecropping. Wait till we get into that segment. If you refuse to do the sharecropping, which kept you in perpetual debt until your death, you were then placed into prison under convict leasing. They would put you back out there on those same farms you refused to do voluntarily. You would now be put out there with no money. Now you're a ward of the state, and you have to go back to that farm to continue to be a slave on those grounds. I've had William Dickens as a guest on my other show talking about how he has sharecropped, how he had to do time in prison for, felonious acts, did 10 years. When he came back out of prison, he went back to the place where he was a sharecropper. He's younger than me. He went back there for employment, and I don't want to botch the story. I know that he had asked the state for the same job he did in order to make more money through the state. The same job he did in prison, he asked for that job working, as a freedman under the state. And they told him, we can't hire you because you're an ex-felon. But you can go back to jail and we can rehire you in that capacity as a cellmate. This is what we're enduring. not long ago. This is still going on.
As if he wants to stay there in order to help his former master out, as if they're friends or equals or something. And lastly, there's Everett Brown, who plays Big Sam, who saves Scarlett from some Yankee bandits. This scene always perplexed me because it is nice to see an old movie portray a black man as heroic, but he's only saving her because the movie portrays Scarlett as a good slave master, which she most certainly was not. Besides its portrayal of enslaved people, the movie goes out of its way in order to make the audience sympathize with the Confederacy's plight and cause, which was to keep black people in bondage. Most people in the US and of course outside of the US don't really realize how much the Civil War meant for the South. They really wanted to keep people enslaved. Decades after the Civil War, during the early 1900s, statues of slave owners were donated to institutions across the country by the sons and daughters of the Confederacy. The U.S. Navy still flies the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag is also sewn into a lot of Southern state flags and is a symbol of white supremacy and needs to be put away, much like this movie. So, part 2, the normalization of white supremacist propaganda. And you might be wondering, wow, that's pretty harsh. It's not like Birth of a Nation or something. But here's the thing, it basically is. It's just a more sanitized version and seen as high art or a masterpiece. And in many ways, Gone with the Wind is a remarkable film. The filming techniques were really innovative and new, and the performances are also very well done. But it's also a movie that holds up white supremacy. And both can be true, but one of those outweighs the other. Something being called art doesn't give it any intrinsic value. The conversation around Gone with the Wind needs to change from, yes, it's propaganda, but it's still worth keeping around because film techniques, to it's art, a form of human expression, and that doesn't give it any inherent value, especially if it falsifies history and holds up dangerous ideologies. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how Gone with the Wind upholds white supremacy. Firstly, it teaches us that slave owners were good and that enslaved people actually liked being enslaved. It desensitizes us to the horror that was slavery and essentially black genocide. And because it desensitizes us, when we learn about the real horrors of slavery, a lot of people refuse to believe that it was that bad. The movie is also a huge middle finger to the actual descendants of enslaved people, which Hattie McDaniel was. They most certainly did not and do not want the suffering of their ancestors to be portrayed as them having a good time in order to make white people feel better about themselves. Secondly, like I mentioned before, the movie romanticizes the Confederate South and the Confederacy in general. Scarlett's main love interest, Ashley, is a Confederate soldier. Thirdly, and most notable, is that Gone with the Wind has never really gone away. It was re-released in 1942, 1947, 1954, 1967, 1971, 1974, 1989, 1998, and 2014. This movie has been repackaged again and again for white audiences. White girls with their mammy dolls have turned into white women with their Gone with the Wind tote bags. White women show this falsification of history to their children at a very young age. I remember being in elementary school and watching Gone with the Wind with my family. I grew up with a very intense Gone with the Wind fan. I saw the merchandise, the tote bags, the dolls, the calendars, and grappling with the fact that this movie needs to be put to rest goes against a lot of what I was taught and what a lot of other people were taught. We were taught that this film is a cinematic masterpiece and teaches us about history, when in reality, the film doesn't teach anything except how outwardly racist the film industry was. You just can't keep toting around a movie about the Confederacy and enslaved people that are happy to be there in 2020. So part 3. What happened to Hattie McDaniel? A lot of white people feel absolved of any guilt they feel watching a movie about happy slaves because the Academy gave Hattie McDaniel an Oscar for her performance. That's why I think it's imperative to talk about the black actors of Gone with the Wind and note how their careers, unsurprisingly, did not take off after it. Hattie McDaniel actually had a very sad life after Gone with the Wind. She continued to be typecast in mammy roles, and she was criticized by some members of the NAACP for continuing to play those roles, when that was literally all she was given. She later died an early death at age 59 due to health complications, and her estate, which was only worth around $10,000, was taken away by the IRS. Her Oscar is also missing. Hollywood was not kind to her and does not deserve a pat on the back considering all they did to hurt her. Next, there's Butterfly McQueen, who actually took a break from acting in the 60s due to the fact that the only roles that were available to her were that of maids. After leaving acting, she went to the City College of New York and graduated in political science at age 64. She later returned to acting in the 70s and starred in the original production of Wiz in Baltimore. Oscar Polk was a Broadway man and was actually in a few films after Gone with the Wind, but unfortunately he was struck by a cab in New York and died at the age of 49. Lastly, there's Everett Brown, who also died at a very young age, at age 51. And he actually has a very extensive filmography, but most of the roles he portrayed went uncredited. So Gone with the Wind not only hurt Black people, but also these individuals' careers. No one gave a shit about them. They just gave Hattie McDaniel an Oscar and was like, equal rights, I guess. So the conclusion. There are still plenty of physical and digital copies of this movie for you to watch it whenever you want in the comfort of your own home. It's not like the white supremacist police is going to break into your house and steal your Gone with the Wind VHS. It being vaulted means that it will no longer be re-released on the big screen, on streaming services, or on cable. It means that it will no longer be shown as part of the school curriculum in classrooms across the United States. Its memory will fade and it will be remembered for what it was, extremely hurtful white supremacist propaganda. We don't need another Scarlett O'Hara anniversary Barbie doll, we don't need the tote bags, and we most definitely don't need Mammy dolls or sexy Rhett Butler calendar art. What we really need to do is sit down and see slavery and the Confederacy for what they were, evil. And the way we start with that is laying the most lauded film in Hollywood history to rest. So that's the end of the video. Thank you so much to everyone who comes here every week to support my content. I hope you enjoyed as well as learned something new in this mini-series about anti-Blackness in the United States. And
Thank you guys so much for watching, for tuning in. I see you, Terry Lewis. Thank you so much. I want to wish you all a very, very happy Resurrection Sunday tomorrow for those of you who are Christian and celebrate Easter. Happy Resurrection Sunday to the arisen Christ within each and every one of you. Thank you so much for joining the live. If you'd like to join me on the Clubhouse and come up on the stage and have a conversation, I'll keep the Clubhouse open for just a few minutes. Otherwise, it's been fun playing with you guys. I will see you back again Monday with more highlights from the Chauvin trial over on my Ida B. Wells 2.0 series and more Dear Immigrants because of Adocs on Monday, 6 o'clock Pacific time. The Ida B. Wells anti-Black racism Chauvin trial show starts, and 7 o'clock followed by Dear Immigrants because of Adocs on Monday. And with that said, family, I love to pray us out that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever Adocs and its allies are, God truly is, because, family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Know that I love you Black and I love you strong. Peace, family. Mwah.